Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Sport This Week video, and in today's video I've got basketball, tennis, ice hockey, rugby, NFL, cricket, football, UFC, boxing and F1 news. If you are new around here though and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do need like the video, and let's get straight into it. So starting off, I'm going to start off with the basketball news. And so Warriors lost 112 to 115 versus Kings. Lakers won 116 to 103 versus Nets. Celtics won 126 to 122 versus Thunder. Heat won 113 to 112 versus Suns. Warriors won 132 to 95 versus Spurs. Heat lost 112 to 104 versus Raptors. Celtics won 126 to 101 versus Hawks. Warriors lost 130 to 119 versus Suns. Heat lost 107 to 106 versus Wizards. Celtics won 117 to 109 versus Pelicans. Warriors won 111 to 101 versus Knicks, and Lakers won 128 to 121 versus Pistons. And that is all the basketball news. Moving on to the tennis news, where it's the continuation of the Turin finals. And so Medvedev lost 2-1 versus Rublev. Djokovic won 2-0 versus Tsitsipas. Nadal lost 2-0 versus Auger Aliassime. Djokovic won 2-0 versus Rublev. Tsitsipas won 2-1 versus Medvedev. Nadal won 2-0 versus Ruud. Djokovic won 2-1 versus Medvedev. Tsitsipas lost 2-1 versus Rublev. Djokovic won 2-0 versus Fritz. Djokovic won 2-0 versus Ruud to win the men's singles Turin finals. And Djokovic will be allowed to play in the Australian Open. And so two good things going on for Djokovic this week, and that is all your tennis news. Moving on to the ice hockey news now. Maple Leafs won 5-2 versus Penguins. Canadiens lost 5-1 versus Devils. Red Wings lost 3-2 versus Ducks. Canadiens lost 6-4 versus Blue Jackets. Maple Leafs lost 3-2 versus Devils. Bruins won 4-1 versus Flyers. Red Wings won 7-4 versus Sharks. Maple Leafs won 5-2 versus Sabres. Bruins won 6-1 versus Blackhawks. Red Wings won 6-1 versus Blue Jackets. Canadiens won 5-4 versus Flyers. And Sedin, Alfredson, Sedin, Luongo, Carniege and Salinen are all in the Hall of Fame. Moving on to the rugby news now. South Africa won 63 to 21 versus Italy. Georgia won 13 to 12 versus Wales. Scotland won 52 to 29 versus Argentina. Australia won 30 to 10 versus Samoa. England drew 25 to 25 versus New Zealand. Ireland won 13 to 10 versus Australia, and France won 35 to 17 versus Japan. And that is all the rugby news. Moving on to the NFL news now. Packers lost 27-17 versus Titans. Rams lost 27-20 versus Saints. Patriots won 10-3 versus Jets. Cup placed on ICR. Eagles signing Sue, and Ertz is out for the season. Moving on now to the cricket news. Australia won by 6 wickets versus England. Australia won by 72 runs versus England. And India won by 65 runs versus New Zealand. And moving on now to the football news, well, there's a lot less than what there normally is. Lennon has retired. Allegri won Coach of the Month. Cahill has retired. Jones has signed a new Liverpool contract until 2027. Man U won 3-2 versus Arsenal. Man City won 2-1 versus Everton. And it was the start of the World Cup, where Ecuador won 2-0 versus Qatar, and Chelsea won 3-0 versus Spurs. Obviously, that wasn't part of the World Cup. But yeah, that is all the football news. Next week is going to be a lot more, of course, because it's the World Cup now. And I mean, when this is out, there's a few games that have already been played, but that's going to be in next week's news. Moving on now to the boxing news. Billam Smith versus Ko Haj. Aziz versus Fielding. Cutler, Riley, Dubois, Robinson versus Campbell. And Congo will fight on the 17th of December. And that Robinson versus Campbell fight I'm very excited for, as if you don't know, I've had both of them on the channel and they're both great guys, and so it's just a fight that I'm very much looking forward to. I don't have a preference on either side for that fight. Moving on, Williams will fight Trimech on the 25th of November. Stewart versus Ignatius, and Arthur versus McIntyre will fight on the 2nd of December. Lawal will fight Jameson on the 27th of November. Taylor has joined Happy Punch. Castro versus Lopez. Ferreira versus Brown, and Herrera versus Sakira will fight on the 3rd of December. Beterbiev will fight a Yard on the 28th of January, which is a big fight which I'm very much excited for. Davey won via TK in round 4 versus Cummings. Hayden won via points versus Istrait. Strand won via points versus Martinez. Owen won via points versus Valverde. Big congratulations to Owen. Of course, we've had him on the channel and he's getting big wins, so congratulations to him. Taylor won via TK in round 2 versus Bretchard. Cooper won via points versus Stewart to become a Midlands area welterweight champion. Yard won via KO in round 3 versus Koikov. James won via points versus Wainwright. Davis won via unanimous decision versus Baluta to become EBU European and WBC International Super Bantamweight Champion. KSI will fight Danis on the 14th of January. Minicon won via TK in round 4 versus Joseph, which I believe I did predict that one right. Buckingham won via TK in round 1 versus Ice Poseidon, which I didn't predict right, I don't think. FaZe Temple won via KO in round 1 versus Overflow, which I believe I did predict right. King Kenny won via KO in round 1 versus DK Money, which I did predict right. Hardy won via unanimous decision versus Rahman Jr., which I didn't predict right but was an amazing fight. Dean the Great won via KO in round 3 versus Walid Sharks, which I believe I did predict right. Bruckner won via TK in round 2 versus Demur. I can't remember if I predicted that right or not. Davis will fight to Garcia on the 7th of January. And Munguia won by KO in round 3 versus Korea, which I did predict right. I think I might have said round 4 or 3 for a KO win for Munguia, but hopefully after this fight he's now going to step up. I know he's calling out Golovkin, and that will be a fight I would very much like to see. Moving on to the UFC news now though. Salikov won by KO in round 3 versus Phil Howe. Cortez Acosta won via decision versus Sherman, and Nzenchukwu won via KO in round 2 versus Kutalaba. And that is all the UFC news. Moving on to the F1 news now. Hulkenberg to drive for Haas in 2023, and Schumacher to leave Haas now at the end of the season. And this was the last race of the season. It was the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, where Verstappen was on pole, Perez started second, and Leclerc started third. In the end, Verstappen won, Leclerc came second, and Perez came third, with Hamilton, Latifi, and Alonso not finishing. And yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.